today's live chat, which is coming from the countryside outside Wrocław, Poland, southeast of Wrocław, where the last videos have been done from. The noise in the background is a main road, and so now I've just crossed the main road and walking out onto the dike where I've walked in the past. In this video, what I want to do is to talk about the referenda which are being held today, the pseudo-referenda, perhaps I should say, being held in the occupied parts of Ukraine. I need to point out that these pseudo-referenda are not being held in every part of occupied Ukraine, because to the north of the Donbass, in the areas which are still held by the aggressor, then as I understand, no referenda are being held there. It's just in the provinces of Lugansk, Donetsk, Kherson and Zaporizhia. So now I'm going to make a prediction here, and I bet you're going to think that I've had Putin on the phone telling me, but I'm going to make the prediction that these referenda are going to show 97% support for annexation into Russia. And I'm also going to predict that there's going to be a turnout in excess of 100% of the people who are living there at present. Now, I must state, and I hope you believe me, that the Kremlin didn't forward the results to me at an earlier time. Now, the referenda have been used by others in the past. Hitler used them quite often, so I suppose it should come as no surprise that the Nazi regime in the Kremlin, or the neo-Nazi regime in the Kremlin, is, along with all the other things which it's taken from German Nazism, or 1930s and 40s German Nazism, it's now using for its own, such as the symbolism, the worship of the leader, the mass parades, and the use of the Nazi-style identification marks, the Z's and the V's, which are obviously the form of the swastika. I do of course appreciate that a Z and a V on a tank is an identification mark, but not when it's being used at the mass meeting. Hello, Colin. So that's my prediction. Now the point though is to ask, why even bother? Because what will it mean? Will this mean that if these occupied areas are now part of Russia, that any attack on them will be seen as an attack on Russia itself, and therefore, according to Russian doctrine, I don't know if this is law or not, or at least military doctrine, they can use nuclear weapons to defend it? Or does it mean that the people who are now under Russian law being illegally mobilized, because it would be illegally mobilized if they were sent to a conflict area, then does it mean that they then, as they're defending so-called Russian territory, that they can actually be there and defend it, being conscripts to the Russian army? I mean, I don't know which one it is, what the point of this is. I think that very few people will agree with this outside of the Putin or the fascist circle around the current Russian leadership. Hello, Hugh. So, in my opinion, what we can see, for example, in Crimea in 2014, where the referendum was held, and clearly in that case they had years and years to prepare it. But despite this, the years they had to prepare it, they still managed to produce 121% vote in favor of annexation by Russia in Sevastopol, and that was on Russian state television itself. Now, in parts of Crimea, I don't doubt, and this is from what people have told me, that there could be support for annexation in certain given areas between 30% and 50%. It could even have been that high. But in these areas that have recently been occupied, I very much doubt it's anything like 3 or 5%. What we can see is you can have a look at the who voted for what party in Ukrainian elections, and they're all on the internet, the result of Ukrainian elections, and you can see there were parties which advocated for a union with Russia, and they didn't really get much in the way of support, but they did occasionally get a few percent points. And the thing is, if there had been this much support, then people possibly would have actually voted for them. I do appreciate, of course, that people sometimes say, oh, there's no point in voting for this party or that party because they're not going to win anyway. I do appreciate that. So people might not necessarily vote for the party that they want to win. But I think it would have been higher had this been the case. More support, that is. So if we look at the fraudulent referenda which were held in Nazi Germany, for example, in Austria, or those asking if people actually agreed with the policy of Nazi Germany, then one of the things is that we see these massive amount of support always, and something like well over 99%. Now in Albania, for example, they had the Albanian general election of February 1987, something I can remember quite clearly because it was the Times column, where everybody in Albania except for one person voted for the Communist Party. Now and obviously that person just depended on a change in voting habits of 49.999%, and then the Albanian Communist Party would no longer have been in power. The way I see it is that it's a bit stupid saying just one person voted against it, because it just takes one person to speak to another person and they know the elections are fraudulent. So the Nazis were a bit more, they thought of this one, and public opinion to a certain extent did matter in Nazi Germany, and Goebbels and Hitler certainly showed themselves to respond to public opinion and even back down when it was against them. So that's why the falsified elections, but they always showed a few thousand people disagreeing with the decision. So when people got together and started talking amongst themselves, they at least would think, hang on, everybody else has voted for this, but we were the only ones against it. In the case now, with these referenda, you've got a situation where you've got huge amounts of the population have left. Now, I was at a refugee area. I don't know if camp's not the right word, because it was a school in near Lviv. But there, nearly everybody was from Severodonetsk. So nearly everybody. I mean, there's even places I went to in that have been liberated, and there, for example, one place, Borodyanka, there's only about 10% of the population was still actually living there. So, and I suspect in many of these areas that is the case. Now, I do appreciate in places such as in the Kherson and Zaporizhia oblasts, where people didn't have a chance to escape, then then the population may be actually higher. Now, there's an additional problem that we see at the moment, is that with people trying to escape from Russia to avoid fighting, if these areas become part of Russia, and we know perfectly well that they will do, therefore the people who live there, the men, can be conscripted. And we've seen men being conscripted over the age of 60. And now I took a train from Lviv to Kiev in May, and on that train I was in the first class compartment, and a sleeping compartment, and the person with me, he was a couple of years older than me, but he served 2 years in Afghanistan. So I mean, we had this I thought really interesting conversation about what happened, even though I thought it was a bit stupid in the circumstances, talking about the Afghan war when his whole family was in Italy, and he was going back to see if the house had been destroyed or not. But I don't know, maybe I helped him forget the current situation. But the people of his age are now apparently being conscripted in Russia, and so anybody, that must be a great risk for those in the occupied areas. We see today on the news, for example, how many people are trying to get into Georgia or Finland. The Finnish foreign minister was saying that they're going to have to be more careful about who they let in. As far as Georgians are concerned, Georgia's a rather small country, and it's the border areas are very mountainous, and therefore I suppose it's for people who are physically fit, then they might get over. But there is now a fear that when young men turn up at the border, they will be served their draft papers and told not to and be not permitted to go over the border. The passports will be withdrawn, the draft papers will be served, and they could find themselves escorted back to wherever it was that they came from. But what I suspect will happen, just my feeling, is that what we've seen is that they have used ethnic minorities. When I use the word ethnic minority, that's perhaps not even correct, because they're not picking on, hello Annie, they're not picking on ethnic minorities. They're not picking on the ethnic minorities living in the capital. They're picking on the ethnic minorities of those, the colonial people, if you like, the people who have been colonized by the Russians, or were colonized by the Russians in the 19th century. So people in Siberia and hello you and Dagestan, etc. Right, so Colin's just asked, what do I think about the Nord Stream explosions today? I didn't know there had been. Sorry, I had noticed that there was an explosion in Płotsk which killed 2 people, but I didn't know that that was anything to do with I noticed that Apke there wrote that ask any engineer what happens if you keep the gas in the pipeline that's closed on the other side. I don't know. I know nothing about it. I'm going to presume on my non-knowledge of what's happened that was an accident. I mean, gas does tend to explode from time to time, and what with me being a motorhome person, I know a little bit about keeping gas in motorhomes and the safety precautions that have to be taken. I don't know. I can't say. I very much doubt that would be done deliberately, though. But I don't know. I don't know the facts. So I'm sorry. I can't comment on that. One thing I can say, though, and again now it's I don't have evidence for this, but I'm just make the point in the circumstances, is the following: that there must be some people. Lots of people in Russia have got very rich because they're part of the establishment, not just the establishment elite, but the apparatus of repression. And now I've heard of people crossing the border and having to pay $12,000 to do so. That's a 1 and a 2 and 3 zeros. Now $12,000, that is well over an annual income for the average person living in Russia. It's a huge amount of cash. I mean, for us it's quite a lot. So if people are prepared to pay this much money to be smuggled into Georgia, it appears to be that they're being smuggled. I don't know if they're going through official channels or it's but I suspect that this is being done with the connivance of the Russian border guards, maybe even the Georgian ones, I don't know. But if you think of the amount of these people are themselves, they're not at risk of being sent to Ukraine because they're the border guards. They're excluded from the draft because they're already part of the system. How much money could potentially be earned if you've got these huge queues? What it appears is the people who are leaving are largely educated people who can afford to leave, because to be a refugee, there's one thing, often you need to have money to be a refugee. It's when people say of the Ukrainians, say, oh, these Ukrainians, they've got fancy cars coming here. Yes, some of them have got fancy cars because they're the ones who could afford to leave. But those who couldn't afford to leave were stuck there. And so it seems to me that the people we're likely to see leaving Russia are the educated young men from relatively well-off backgrounds, and they're the ones who'll have the money to pay off the guards and all the rest of it. And let's face it, if it's going to save your life, then it's not a lot of cash to pay. Anyway, so there's my predictions. I'm predicting a massive not Russian victory. It's not a Russian. It's a defeat for Russia. It's a victory for the Putinists. And Collins just made the point that the gas can be vented off to prevent explosions, and yeah, I suppose it can be. I have noticed that, for example, with this isn't motorhome, but I would rather than buy LPG, because LPG is a mixture of butane and propane, and the mixture varies from one country to another country. So if you've got an LPG vehicle, then what happens is that in some countries it gives you better mileage or kilometrage, whichever way you tend to look at it. It goes further than in other countries. Anyway, so I had this idea: if I bought propane rather than butane, because propane has a much lower boiling point, and therefore it would last longer, even though the calorific value is less than that of butane, but it costs more. But anyway, I gave up that after a while. I noticed when you take it back, there's always a bit of liquid at the bottom, and you hear it in the canister. So good. So there you have it. So that's my ideas for what's happening today. I'd have to say also that this idea about the nuclear is quite worrying, because if Putin does decide to use tactical nuclear weapons, a tactical nuclear weapon is a battlefield nuclear weapon. As a battlefield weapon, just makes a louder bang and explosion than would a conventional weapon. But if this is the idea that they will claim that this is now part of Russia, therefore they're going to defend it, it is a bit of concern. However, I would hope that there is a chain of command, and somewhere in that chain of command would say, no, I'm not doing it. If that were to happen, if somebody on the chain of command were to say to Putin, no, I'm not doing it, that could bring about the end of Putin's regime. In 1917, there was a soldier who was given an order. His name has been lost to history, but he was given an order to shoot at the crowds, and he said, no, I'm not doing it. And seen it argued that it was him, that person, nameless, the history, who was the person who brought about the Russian Revolution and the overthrow of the Tsarist system, because he refused to fire at striking workers or demonstrating workers. So anyway, good. Thanks for being here today. It's been nice to see you. Sorry, I've had a lot of rain here, really torrentially. Oh, sorry. Do I think that depleted uranium ordnance is being used or will be the first step to using tactical nuclear weapons? No, I don't think it is actually. See you, Annie. I think that depleted uranium, in my opinion, is not like to lead to worse things happening. Thanks, Jose. Thank you. In my opinion, but I mean, let's face it, because we used depleted uranium in Iraq, if I remember rightly. Thanks, Annie. Well, as you can see, I'm in Poland and it's quite safe here, despite some weird noises as I've been filming. That was an aircraft. I don't know if it came out very well, but there was an aircraft making a funny noise above me. Anyway, I'm incidentally nothing to do with the subject, but I'm still using the same gimbal because I bought a new gimbal and the DHL failed to deliver it. Said the address wasn't correct, and that despite the fact that the address is written in big block letters outside. But anyway, so that's why I can't put on a microphone into my ears and sorry, the thing, it was a gimbal gamble. It was indeed. I gambled on the gimbal, or rather DHL did, because I'm going to give them a good shouting at tomorrow and about checking addresses before saying an address is incorrect. Having said that, I haven't seen the original packet, so maybe it was the people who sold it to me who wrote the address incorrectly, and they didn't bother to put my telephone number on the packet either. So okay, thanks very much. Hello, Alan. I've been away for a bit. I'm glad you're still telling us how things are on the ground. Oh, thank you. Yes. Hello, Christopher in Romania. Yeah, so thanks. So see you all soon on the other channel. There will be a commentary at 21:15 Central European time. So all the best from me in Szczecnica, Poland, and thanks for being here. Oh, there's a good shot. Getting cooler climate-wise. Yeah, it certainly is here. It's got a lot cooler. Oh, from the States, Colin, Michael, hello. Right, better. I shall be. Yeah, it's a good final shot, that one, isn't it? If I got out the way, it'll look even better. Right. Yeah, it does look like there's some bombing off in the distance. Yeah, there you go. Ciao, ciao. Nice parking shot.